One thing that Final Fantasy games tend to do is to make many of the iconic elements of the series appear through most of the installments, giving some sort of identity to it, while keeping the individuality of each standalone game with its own story and features. But another layer of that, which I clearly like given my record history of videos that I made, is when there are references that are explicit callbacks to specific games, rather than the franchise as a whole. Almost 3 years ago, I started these compilations because I was greatly pleased by the amount of details like those found in Final Fantasy IX. And in today's video, we'll be doing a recap of these situations, but in Final Fantasy X, including the sequel X-2. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Final Fantasy, I really appreciate it. Speaking of Final Fantasy IX, I think it's fitting to start with a callback to this game, and it's a small sneaky one, so we need to pay attention. Upon arriving to the town of Luca on our ship, the liveless city in the game, probably known for its blitzball activities, we have a nice introductory CGI scene, and the music that plays during it is from its soundtrack, the Blitzers. But if we pay attention, we can hear another festive tune in the background during this part of the scene.
The opening tournament of the season.
Now let's hear that part again and compare it with a short song that plays during the first part of Final Fantasy IX, where the Tantalus play I Want to Be Your Canary starts as Queen Brand gets excited.
The opening tournament of the season.
To say it properly, the song from the Final Fantasy IX OST Plus, an album that has songs that are mostly used in cutscenes or are short ones that don't loop, called Bran and the Performers, is played in the background for a brief moment during the cutscene arriving to Luca in Final Fantasy X. Staying in Luca, but later in the game if we come back, we can find in this town an NPC that will say one of the most iconic lines in the series, that originated from Final Fantasy IV, or its translations rather. This NPC found at the town square will say that I asked a warrior monk out to the cafe, but she called me a Spoony Bard. The line itself is spoken by the character Tela as an insult to Edward, the bard of the game, and contrary to the silly and nonsensical way it sounds, it comes from a moment of hatred or despair from the old man. But eventually got famous for its silliness and used as an example of interesting translations. It has entered popular culture and been referred to outside the Final Fantasy fandom even. Also, while this sounds more like a reference that is used everywhere, technically Final Fantasy X was the first one to make a callback to this line, before the remasters or future games started doing it constantly, like in Dissidia, Final Fantasy XI, XII or XVI. Moving on to a specific category, I want to talk about one of the party members, the Black Mage Lulu, and most specifically her weapon of choice. Contrary to most black mages that use staffs, Lulu will use some sort of voodoo doll, or puppet, with her first one being a Moogle doll. The way weapons work in FF10 is very unique, as there are many aesthetically similar ones, but they have their own name according to the special effect they add to the attacks more than anything. And while it's true that her variations will be always based on Final Fantasy mascots, like Cactuars, these get more specific. For example, the first one will be the curious case of Ketchi. I say that because while nowadays you could argue that's another mascot for the series, having appearances in FF6, 11, 13 and 14, this doll in particular seems to be a specific allusion to the Final Fantasy VII character, who's the most famous one as he is a party member, giving his black and white coloration with a red scarf. So I guess it works for both themes, the mascot one and the allusion to other Final Fantasy games one. In fact, he is going to be chosen as a mascot specifically one more time during Final Fantasy X-2, where one dress sphere allowed the girls to wear a full outfit of a different creature. Pain will be a Tonberry, Yuna a Moogle, and Riku will be Ketchi, holding a PuPu, a creature from Final Fantasy VIII. Speaking of, that will be another one of Lulu's puppet weapons. Every time you get one of the weapons to be named space related, it is referring to this particular creature and its alien-like features, as shown in its appearance in Final Fantasy VIII, where it will be a very special type of enemy encounter, appearing many times on its spaceship, abducting various objects on the world map first. until you actually get to fight it after a couple of encounters. You can destroy this UFO while PuPu pleads for elixirs like the magic pot do, or you can kill it if you feel chaotic. The reward in the case you have an elixir is a triple triad card, of course. While the other common weapon for Lulu is also going to be Final Fantasy VIII related, with a race that I mentioned every time would fit perfectly as another mascot for the series but didn't have much transcendence, even less than PuPu I think. It's the Moomba. Contrary to PuPu and its random enemy encounter attribute, Moombas are a full race in Final Fantasy VIII that are tied to the plot or at the very least with very important characters, like Laguna mostly, only being able to say his name out loud, despite being considered like the perfect form of the Shumi race. Also, and more importantly, they are super cute. They could easily have a resurgence if given the right timing. Another thing is that this Moomba puppet was used again in the mascot dress sphere in Final Fantasy X-2, but this time is held by Yuna during her Moogle onesie. And finally, for the Lulu section, we have her celestial weapon, the considered ultimate weapon that each character gets. This has to be special, so unlike the rest, it should be unique and not one of the many Moogles or Ketchi you can have, and it will be the Onion Knight. This is certainly not a mascot, it's a clear allusion to Final Fantasy III and the main default job that the characters have in that game, contrary to the more common and simple Knight job. And probably the biggest feature that this game in terms of marketing or brand has, to the point that it's the designated character to represent that game in places like Dissidia or any other spin-off like that. Moving on with the story, later we'll get to know more about the mysterious Seymour and the Aeon he's associated with called Anima. Now, I'll admit this is not much of an illusion, but as the big fan that I am of Tetsuya Nomura's enemy design, I want to show this nightmare fuel of a summon. And by that, I don't mean this already suffering creature. Let's scroll down a little bit and see how worse it gets. And by worse I mean amazing. This is similar to another fantastic enemy design in the series, specifically the final boss of Final Fantasy VIII, the last form of Ultimecia. Mostly for this particular design attribute, where the bottom part of this witch has, surprise, another body that is also active during the special move, so I want to show them. One enemy that I do think is a proper reference, we can find them in the Monster Arena, a place in the Calmlands that, by capturing the enemies of the game, allows you to unlock more challenging fights against unique enemies. One of them, after you capture one of each fiend from every area, is the Neslug, a hideously mutated snail who's able to hide in its shell at some points during the fight. This one is a reference to the very first boss you encounter in Final Fantasy VI, where you explore the mines of Narshe with Terra, Biggs and Wedge, all aboard the Machina armor, and fight the snail-like creature Ymir. Ymir? Anyways. Of course, outside of being mollusks enemies, one would think that there's no reason to link them directly. But, during the GBA version of FF6, among its additional features, we can find a new boss at the Dragon's Den who's an alternate color version of Ymir, and it's called Neslug, to make the callback a full circle, as this version came after FF10. This is also the only Monster Arena creation that has its own creature model and does not look like any other recolored fiend that you can fight within the game, so it is quite special. Another classic one you can find here, it's one enemy with a more direct reference in its name, Shinryu, the iconic super boss of Final Fantasy V that eventually turned into a common among the series. But during these days, it was the first attempt to make a callback to it. It's true that in Final Fantasy IX, a second version of the Shinryu appeared, but eventually the long dragon aesthetic remained as the stable design of it, for the remasters or Final Fantasy XIV for example. This creature in FF10, also a type of super boss, while it's a shiny version of the enemy Evrae, has the uniqueness of being a fight underwater, while the original Shinryu in FF5 likes to start the fight with its strong tidal wave, the signature move of Leviathan that it borrows for a second. So this setting underwater may be able to give you some war flashbacks of that fight. And if we talk about Shinryu, we can't leave this one behind, the last big enemy that is a super boss that I want to mention. It's a familiar term nowadays in the series, and it is the Omega weapon. The weapons in Final Fantasy are now its own thing, starting properly in FF7 with this biomechanic Kaiju vibe, but at this point the Omega weapon only existed in Final Fantasy VIII, making this the first repeating appearance, and therefore a callback to it, as it's the iconic superboss of that game, found at Ultimecia's castle and being the big challenge in the game. And as in the past I did a video about the role of the weapons in the series, let me share what I said about Omega and its alternate version Ultima back then. Omega was originally a monk from Yevon, who was branded as a traitor centuries ago, and executed, so his spirit roamed around the dungeon known as Omega Ruins, where his hatred for Yevon grew so strong that during his death he spawned the creation of Ultima weapon previously mentioned, while his own spirit ultimately became Omega weapon itself, being a stronger version of the other one. There's a pretty nice touch with this weapon in its sequel, Final Fantasy X-2, and that is its description in its bestiary, where you can read: "A mighty fiend of legend, wielding greater magic than ever. This terror teaches all who approach the true meaning of Ultima. Whatever you do, don't call it Atma." A different category that makes Final Fantasy X stand out is the Aeons. While summons in Final Fantasy are almost mandatory, the role, design and use of them in this game made them stand out. We talked about Anima a little bit before, as you can also use it eventually, but one of the circuit Aeons to unlock later in the game is a straight up reference to a Final Fantasy IV boss fight. I'm talking about the Magus Sisters. They are a trio of ladies called Sandy, the tall slim one, Cindy, the more chunky one, and Mindy, the smallest one of the bunch. All attributes shared in each game, with the specific detail that the FF10 version they are looking more armored insectoid in their appearance. As an Aeon in this game, they are pretty strong, as there are 3 different characters that are able to break the damage limit, but the orders you give them might be a little bit confusing and random. Still completely worth it though. In FF4, they are minions of the fiend Barbariccia, and they share some similarities in their own boss fight. Things like casting Reflect on Cindy, so Mindy can cast a spell on it and bounce back to the party, and their special attack in both games is the Delta attack. In fact, the animation in 10 is them surrounding the enemy party in 8 crystals, 4 of a blue hue and 4 of a red-orange hue, and I believe that this is intentional to allude to the 4 blue crystals of the surface world and the 4 red-orange crystals of the underworld in Final Fantasy IV. It's quite a special setting in that game after all. Another Aeon you could fit into a reference is Yojimbo himself. While his actions and mechanics are close to the Sansetsuken Deathblow of Odin, it works in its own peculiar way. Yojimbo means bodyguard, so by giving him money you are asking him for his services to kill an enemy. That's the idea. And while the inspiration could be this overall idea, similar looking enemies called Yojimbo already existed in the series, like the ones found in Final Fantasy VI here, so maybe it started there. The next category I arbitrarily decide is the one involving the weapons overall. I said before how in this game they are kinda weird. You obtain them in a less straightforward way, and their distinction come in the special abilities attached to them. For example, Wakka's Fireball is one that has the attribute Fire Strike. If you add any other elemental one, it turns into Double Header immediately. It's mostly the name changes, therefore the focus of the reference is going to be their names here. For Tidus, we already have an interesting one, because with the abilities Double AP and Overdrive, we create Save the Queen. This sword name is commonly associated with Beatrix, the paladin of Final Fantasy IX. Not a playable character fully, but you are allowed to see this weapon. But the particularity is that its Japanese name is Laevatein, because there was a name exchange with a Yuna weapon, who instead got one of her staffs to be called Save the Queen. I honestly can't truly say which one fits better, because while one is a sword and it makes sense, the fact that it's linked mainly to Beatrix might make it a female-oriented weapon to have, as the name was also used for a Kistis weapon in Final Fantasy VIII. While adding to a weapon the ability Double Overdrive alone, will create the sword LionHeart, which is the last name of Final Fantasy VIII main protagonist Squall, and not only that, but it's also the name of his own ultimate weapon, so it's even better. It's also fair to mention that there was a Cat Buster sword to be included somewhere, and this one came with a traditional model too, so maybe as a celestial weapon proposition. This video from Final Fantasy Union is more adequate to tell that story. For Yuna, besides this case with Save the Queen, a very strong magic based staff will become the Fairy Staff. And it's a reference to Aerith's weapon, the Fairy Rod, which has the same Japanese name as Yuna's, and you can see the connection between the two of them with their white mage abilities. Kimahri has a couple. He may not be exactly a dragoon, but he wields lances, so you know that he will have Kain's lance, with the ability SOS Overdrive. Kain Highwind, of course, is a dragoon of Final Fantasy IV and quintessential dragoon of the series, being referenced in outfit, poses, and with weapons like this, as it happened also in Final Fantasy IX and XIII. While the ability Double AP and Overdrive will create Vina's Gospel, which is the ultimate weapon from Sid Highwind, party member of Final Fantasy VII, and while more of an airship owner like every other Sid, he has dragoon limit breaks like every other Highwind. Notice the shared last name? Well, without going further, Kimahri has a lance called Highwind too, but at this point that's more generic. And lastly we have Auron and his broadswords. First one will be Matoya's blade, in reference to the Final Fantasy I character, the witch Matoya that lives in a cave with her sentient brooms around, and later is known for appearing in Final Fantasy XIV. While it is weird that a mage is associated with this weapon, that's because it's created with abilities that enhance the magic stat. And a final note on his celestial weapon, the Masamune, which of course is along the Muramasa, a very traditional set of swords that appear in most games, but surely most can think of Sephiroth when reading it. It's also cool that some of these weapons are used in some jobs in Final Fantasy X too. Hey, speaking of. Shifting properly now to this sequel, there are first some small details to highlight, besides the recurring addition of PuPu, for example, like the prequel did. So starting from an obvious one, when we are introduced to our Galwin crew aboard the Celsius, a little kid called Shinra appeared.
Shinra's in our bed. He's a real whiz kid.
Shinra, of course, is the name of the company and last name of its presidents, which is one of the big antagonistic forces of Final Fantasy VII. And there is a fun story about Shinra. A cheeky joke about him suggesting that his inventions and discoveries in this game lead to the world of FF7 and all the work Shinra put into Energy and the livestream originated from this guy. While the remake in 2020 threw also some very sneaky easter eggs, with some historical photos being suspiciously familiar. Of course, it was confirmed by Nojima that the joke got a little bit out of hand when people started properly theorizing that these words are connected. But for our purposes, it is still a very obvious allusion. Without going any further, in a dungeon of the game called the Fiend Colony, the boss of it is an insectoid enemy called King VERMIN. And this might as well be a callback to the way Barret in the original FF7 translation refers to the president when encountering him for the first time, which is at the very least quite amusing choice of words and capitalization, that matches the way this boss fight name is depicted as. Another small details in this game come with the name of a couple of items. The accessories here work as you would expect. Some increase stats, some give you special abilities so you can customize your party, etc. And probably the considered two most powerful accessories that allow your HP to break the limit number of 9999 and to break the damage limit of 9999, and they are called the Enterprise and the Invincible respectively. Both of these are a reference to the main airship names used first in Final Fantasy III, but later used in 4, 9, 14 or 16. Airships in Final Fantasy have been a very important feature in every game, even when they started losing their focus, as you are not able to fly freely in newer games because of the technical limitations. And finally, the last category will be an exclusive feature of Final Fantasy X-2, which is the Garment Grid. These tablets that you are able to assign to any of your party member, and each of them are going to be different, allowing you to set the dress spheres you are able to use during a fight. Each of them will have a different amount of spheres to put, connected in different ways to each other, and different special abilities that you can unlock by changing jobs mid-fight. But what we care about here is the names some of them have. First we have Bum Rush, which is the name of the most powerful blitz attack from Sabin in Final Fantasy VI, or at the very least, from the first translation of the Super Nintendo game, as it later got updated to Phantom Rush. But we know that Final Fantasy VI has some fun history with these name changes and translations. And on the Final Fantasy VI topic, there's also the one called Treasure Hunt, which of course is a very common phrase at first glance, but seeing that the special abilities it unlocks is Mug, the one associated often with thieves in the series, maybe it can be related to Locke Hall from this game, who often correct people that call him a thief, as he considers himself a treasure hunter instead. After completing the first mission in the game, we are rewarded with the grid Healing Wind. This name refers to a limit break from Aerith Gainsborough in Final Fantasy VII, her first one, which as the name implies, heals everyone in the party. Which is fitting as the special ability that the grid unlock by using it are spells like Cura and Curaga. Related to FF7, there's also one called Salvation Promised, which makes me think of the concept of the Promised Land, which is a main theme or feature in that game, but I wouldn't be able to say for sure. Like how in a similar way there's the garment grid The End, which is a pretty common phrase of course, but there is one spell in the series that is called like that too, and it's from Selphie's limit break in Final Fantasy VIII, which is pretty funny, and the main reason I wanted to mention it. But one that is truly a reference is the one called Tetra Master, one you can obtain after completing the mission at the Chamber of the Stolen Faith, while rescuing everyone there. At first glance, this sounds like a normal phrasing related to the number 4, but in Final Fantasy IX, the exclusive card minigame shares this name too. A card game that, mind you, I still have no idea how to properly play, and I like it that way. I like when I hope for the best just by vibes, instead of knowing everything properly. That's why I find it fun. And I'd love to finish this video with one that is more of a coincidence than a planned reference. This last name for a garment grid added in a later version is called Last Resort. Last Resort is the name of Hope Estheim limit break move from Final Fantasy XIII, a special move that Lightning also uses at the end of the trilogy to destroy God and call out for Hope's soul in a pretty symbolic way too. Of course, this game didn't exist yet, but the fact that you obtain it from a boss fight related to Shinra that is called Almighty Shinra, similar to how Almighty Bunivelse is that god of light in 13 that uses Hope as his vessel, makes the connection funny to me. And hey, a Final Fantasy XIII reference in a Final Fantasy X Easter egg video? That sounds amazing to me. Thank you once again for watching, enjoy some Final Fantasy, and I'll see you later. Love you!